What if that high-paying job was the one thing keeping you away from even better opportunities and more living? Hey there, everybody. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. Welcome back to the greatest money show on earth, Stacking Benjamins. Andy Hill was a guy who lived in a house that might be like yours, and he had a job that also might be like yours. And he realized that while he was making good money, like you might be making, he wasn't living according to what he really wanted out of life. So how did he change? What were the steps that he took? We're going to ask Andy that today. Now, before I say hello to Andy, remember, leave your comments in the comment section below the video. I love us chatting together about what we think about Andy's process. And also, if you gain confidence and insights from today's episode, make sure you smash that like button, like all the kids say, so that more people will get the confidence to go do exactly what it takes to make their life much, much better. Subscribe for all our amazing mentors that we bring to you every Tuesday as well. All right. You know what? I'm ready. Are you ready? Let's say hello to Mr. Andy Hill. I'm super happy this guy is across the card table from me again. Usually, though, it's been with either some cards or a board game between us. Today, we're actually going to talk about owning your time. Andy Hill's back. How are you, man?
I am great, Joe. Thank you so much for having me back, man.
You know, what a way to start the year, by the way, talking about this idea of maybe making 2026 and beyond different. And there may be some stackers in our audience who feel the way that you felt when you decided to make the jump to really change your life, to take a whole right-hand turn and do things differently. Can you paint a picture for us of maybe, I don't know, 6 months before you made the jump? Like, what was Andy feeling? Show us what your life was like, and leading up to the move, what was going on?
Yeah, I was feeling pretty stuck in a corporate career that I had. It's almost like a box that I had built for myself. You know, I had this family that I wanted to provide for and give them all the great things in life. But in order to do that, I had a corporate career that paid for all those great things in life. So it was like, oh, I've created a box for myself that I can't seem to get out of, because this corporate career was not one that I enjoyed. I felt a little bit owned by my company. I was traveling a lot. I worked in corporate event marketing, so I would often be working on weekends and traveling, and I was missing some pretty important things that were going on at home. I've got two awesome, adorable kids, and I just felt like I was kind of missing out on their lives.
What were you missing?
I was missing my daughter's birthday. I was missing my son's sporting events. I was just missing these important things that I'd have to say, no, sorry, I'm on the road for that. And it just kind of continued to pull at my heart a little bit each time I had to say no. And so I was kind of seeking an out, man. I was seeking an out from this corporate career and trying to come up with something new that would give me the time, yes, to provide for my family, but maybe also the ability to own a little bit more of my time so I can actually be with my family.
The point you make that I really, really like, that I saw you make in your new book on this topic, it wasn't just your career that owned you, though. It was also the things that you bought that own you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, they use that word, the trappings of life, and I think I had a lot of those trappings. In the beginning, it was the house that I couldn't afford. It was the luxury car that I thought was more of the thing that I needed to have. Hey, my parents had luxury cars. I'm only 20. I should have one of those, right? MBA, hey, I think I need to have an MBA in order to make more money, or honestly, just like an ego trip to make me feel really good about being smart. So it's these things that I kind of fell into at the beginning portion of my career, and even in the beginning portion of my marriage, where I thought, okay, these are the things I'm supposed to do because society's doing them. And with that, I didn't actually have the money to buy some of those things. So I got obviously a mortgage, but then a home equity line of credit. I got a luxury car loan. I have student loans for my MBA. It's just all these things that I wanted, but didn't actually have the money to pay for sure.
But what's funny though, dude, is that I hear all that, and yet I know what stackers are thinking, because staying the course is so intoxicating. You get this paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month or whenever, maybe every week. I don't know, but you get this consistent paycheck, even when you don't really feel like showing up. You show up, you can kind of, phone it in a little bit if you want to. and you still get paid. You also, everybody's talking about, you've been talking about, we've been talking about the fact that healthcare this year is going to cost more than it did last year. And holy crap, just thinking about all the changes with navigating that whole maze, like I feel like that makes it really enticing to stay. I got to think that even during that time, Andy, you kept thinking, yeah.
I completely agree with you, Joe. And I never want to be the guy that gets on shows like this and says, quit your job because it feels good. You know, I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's safe. But hey, if you do enough of the financial right moves beforehand, I think you can make a leap. So one of the financial moves, obviously, was testing out if I actually even enjoyed having this side hustle and maybe trying it out afterwards. So testing out that side hustle to see if it actually fit. And number two, making sure somebody would actually pay me to do said side hustle or small business idea to go on my own. And then the third thing is enough money in like an FU money fund, like 12 months of expenses that helped me to say, okay, even if I completely mess this up for myself, for my family, for my kids, I've got 12 months of runway to say, okay, you know, you gave it a shot. Here's some money to cover you. And then the fourth, realization that I can always go back to my corporate job and try it all over again because I knew I was a good producer and I knew that I could make, an impact at another company.
Could you still do that?
I think I could. After being a solopreneur for 5 years now, I really like it. And I like the flexibility of what I've developed. I think what I've had the opportunity to do now is connect with companies and brands and nonprofits even that I would feel a little bit more passionate spending more of my time working with. And as my kids get a little older, they need less of dad. And my daughter tells me quite a bit that she needs less of me. So I will find that I have more time, but still in this season of my life, I think I still have a role here as father inside my house. And my wife still likes to see my face every once in a while, but who knows? As I get a little older, I might decide that, hey, I want to spend more of my time dedicated towards something that I really care about. Not just go back to a corporate job because it pays me good money, but one where I feel like I have some, passion towards. I feel like I'm moving in a direction that pays me money well, but also helps me feel fulfilled.
I feel it's funny, even as I ask you that question, I debate it for myself and I'm like, I think I could. I've been out for a long time, but man, I could, but I'd be a really crappy employee, Andy.
Me too. That's such a true statement. As soon as I'd be asked to do something that's like completely out of my comfort zone, I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And then I'd probably get fired.
That's me too. I would question the moves the boss made way too much. I'm like, what's the ROI on that?
That's true. Because there's so many things that I was asked to do in my 20s and 30s when I was working in corporate world where I just lowered my head and said, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
And I just did them. But after leaving, I don't know if I can do that.
But I love the idea too of play testing what you think you're going to do, not just jumping into it.
Yeah.
Because so many of us think we have these dreams in our head that it's going to be unicorns and rainbows, and that it hasn't been. I'm going to ask you about that coming up. But how long was that runway? How long did you have marriage, kids, and money before you said, you know what, I feel confident enough to make this go full time?
Yeah, I played around with this, a hobby first, I'll call it, and then side hustle for 4 years before I made enough contracts and business where I felt, okay, I think I could do this. I think I could go for it. If I had a full work week to make this happen, then I think I could do it. The year before I left, I was making enough money where I said, okay, if I'm making this with a quarter of the amount of time that I'm spending, then maybe I could double that, triple that in the years to come. And with this, slush fund of money, it'll help me, pivot and grow over time. So yeah, four solid years.
What was the year you finally made the move?
2020, January of 2020 was the year that I made the move. And there was some stuff that happened that year, Joe. You were my neighbor at the time.
Did something happen then? Did something?
Well, I'll give you, I'll say it from a Joe perspective. We were doing a lot of board game nights. And then something happened in 2020 where we stopped doing board game nights for a while.
So weird. Why would we ever stop doing that?
Yeah, history lesson. Yeah, so I jumped in January 2020, gave my notice with my wife's blessing, of course. She said, hey, man, you got this. Go for it. That was a big thing for me, really, to have the confidence of my wife to say, go for it. And then I went for it. And for the first couple of months, man, it was fantastic. I had so much more time to be that present dad and be a great husband and grow my business and work out more, volunteer in the community, like too many things. And then March of 2020 came around, global pandemic, boom, and it all changed, man. My solid contracts that I had set up went away. The advertising dollars went down. All of a sudden, this seemed like a really bad idea. It really did. I got low. I got depressed. I felt like I had made a choice that was very poor for my family, especially as a guy in his peak earning years and with healthcare, all the benefits, the things that you and I talked about at the top of the show. Was this a big mistake? And I got really sad.
What did Nicole say?
At that moment, my wife was so supportive. She said,
was she?
I remember,
okay.
You got this, man. You got this. You can do this. And she had my back. My father at the time, same thing. You've got this. You can do this. I know you can. Great people in our community like you. It's just great to have voices and partners that see you through tough times. And then my fourth really great buddy at the time was that big pile of money. I know I keep coming back to that, but having a year's worth of expenses really made me feel confident that, okay, I can borrow from this, take from this, use it to live our lives, to get through this 1 in 100 year thing that's happening right now, and help me tide this over. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think we used about 3 to 4 months of it. So that 3 to 4 months, though, allowed me to pivot, figure things out, trim where I didn't need to be spending so much, and then grow from there. And it really made a big difference.
I want to talk about, and by the way, I don't remember being positive. I think I said, man, Andy, you really this up.
That sounds about right, actually.
I'm kidding. I did not say that. But
I think you said something like podcaster. That's not a very profitable business choice, my friend.
Dude, you ever see how your neighbor is drowning? He's drowning, and you're going to get into this stuff? There's a tendency, as you know, when you hear people like Cody Sanchez or Gary Vaynerchuk, for people to think that being an entrepreneur is just unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah.
But what are some of the downsides you found to owning your time versus working the 9 to 5?
Yeah, I will say the first thing is the volatility. As you know, there are months where revenue is hot and things are looking good and you're feeling like you're on top of the world. And then there are months where it's like, whoop, where did that go? So inconsistency, as you said, it's really nice to get a paycheck every couple of weeks, no matter what. Even if you were, playing Tetris on your computer or whatever, like you're still getting paid. Not the same when you own your own business. And then number 2 is, you know how you work in that corporate environment and you got all those different departments, the accounting department, the legal department, marketing, sales, etc. You are now all of those things as your solo business owner, and you have to represent in those areas. And if you do not make sure your clients or whoever pays you money is actually following through with that payment, then you do not have any paychecks coming. So these are funny realizations that I learned in year 1 and 2. A third one is leveraging and leaning in on one client or 2 clients and seeing that's plenty. Things are going really well, that nothing's going to change. And then not continuing on the sales cycle to try to get more clients or more business. And that has hit me over the years too. So I've had a client for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and the money's coming in really well. And then all of a sudden, and it's all of a sudden, the change happens. And then since you were so used to that money coming in, it can feel like a big impact. So a big learning lesson that I had with that one is keep some money on the side for those tough times in your business, like a business savings account, business emergency fund for that burn rate that happens. I like 3 to 6 months, at least for my business, based on the experience of things that I've had. And that's helped me to see through some tough months. But those are big learnings that I've had. And they've been big moments of joy, high joys, and then really low lows. So if you're not feeling the stomach of the volatility of that type of thing, small business ownership can be really, really difficult to do. So it's not for everybody. And some of these big leaps like Joe and I have made can be a lot for people and can turn people off.
100%. I think about the times when we lost clients and advertisers, it usually had nothing to do with us. Mm-hmm. I can think of one instance where it truly just was clearly not a fit. Yep. Wasn't working out. I was actually kind of happy to see him go. And that one, I could see it coming. But the other ones, when you've got a great client and is working out for everybody, and then all of a sudden the company gets sold, yep, or gets spun off. Or in one case, in another, there was a big scandal at the business and they changed everything. Like all kinds of craziness has happened that you end up becoming collateral damage.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even sometimes it's like things are going well, the business is going well, the client leaves, and then there's a new person in that role and they say, I'm going to work with somebody else. And it's like, so it's nothing to do with what you did. It's just
right.
Change. And it seems to be about every 2 years. And then there's a big change. I'm like, okay, knowing that cycle, I need to prepare financially for when that happens. So it's additional new sales and having some dry powder per se.
Which is interesting because that goes along with the stat that I read recently about people's job satisfaction in a single role is generally about 2 years. Yeah. And then you become less satisfied. So expecting the person you're working with, that relationship to change in 2 years, I think is a good thing. There were a couple more that I had that were, I thought before I was an entrepreneur that I could take a lot more time off. That I could, and I want to talk about this because you have done that, taken time away, and you can do it, but there's choices that you have to make that happen. And I think it really needs to be a system. Like you came up with the idea of a 3-day week. Where did the idea of and people, by the way, are going to go, oh my God, 3-day week. That's fantastic. Where did the idea of a 3-day week come from?
I think it started with me just dreaming of what a really cool life would be and just kind of looking at the general calendar saying, why do we work 5 days and then have 2 days for relaxation? Shouldn't we just kind of flip that on its head and have more days for relaxation and less days for work? So it didn't happen all of a sudden. Of course, when I started in 2020, I was working just as many hours as I was in my corporate career, maybe even more so, to make sure that this thing was successful. But over time, I've had that goal in mind of saying, well, what can I do to work less and maybe still grow my income? And then really with that extra time of those 4 days, lean into other identities that I actually care about, like taking care of my health, being a better husband, being a better father, being a better friend, spending time with my aging parents so that I have some great memories with them as they're in their late 70s. Things like these I cared about more than growing some large business that made me more than I've already have in my net worth. I got to a point of financial satisfaction and I said, well, I want to have some more time satisfaction. So my script flipped a little bit as I went from, full-time, work in 2020 to more of a part-time role here in 2026.
One of those sad points for me, and I love the fact that you said you didn't get there right away. It was a goal. Yeah. When I first became an entrepreneur, I thought, well, I work for myself. And even my spouse thought this. I work for myself, so I can just go do whatever. And what's funny is you can, but it's a choice, especially at first, because you're not going to get paid if you don't work. And sadly, I found that when I first became an entrepreneur and I'm sitting around doing all the magical things I love doing, but none of them revenue generating, all of a sudden I had no revenue. I was like, dude, what's going on? How come this isn't the magical lifestyle that I thought it was? But you truly do have to plan like you did. You have to plan on, okay, I have this goal and then systematize to get there. But man, I did that all wrong. And then and I know there've been times you've been working on the weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I placed this out there as the goal of 3 days. I'm launching a book right now. When I was writing that book, I was definitely exceeding my 3-day work week for sure. And it was one of those things where I'm going to write this book. Oh yeah, I've got plenty of time to do it. Man, I procrastinated thinking I had a lot more time than I did. And those last couple of months of writing the book, yeah, those were 5-day weeks, maybe bleeding into Saturday morning even. And so, yeah, you got to be flexible with it. But if your North Star, for me at least, was, hey, I would like to move towards a 3-day work week and a 4-day weekend. I continued to get there over time. These were like 1% improvements over the years. They weren't immediate, and it's not an immediate thing. But if that's what you care about, more time ownership, more autonomy of your week and ownership of that, then you can continue to move that way. And that's what I cared about.
The other problem that I've always had, and I still have, and I know it's difficult for you too, is turning it off. You've got a whole chapter in your book about making good use of those 4 days, actually being in the 4 days.
Yeah, it's tough because I now have work that I really like and I really enjoy. So come the end of Thursday, I really have to actively turn my brain off or turn off systems that will bring me back to that. So I have deleted my social media apps from my phone because I know the addiction that it is to check and get that little dopamine hit that people gave me a lot of likes on my Instagram post or whatever it ends up being. I turn off my email from my phone too, so I don't look at any email starting on Thursday night. That way I am intentionally saying, hey, this phone in my hand, there's no work pulls for it anymore. And I know from my brain, just because I feel it, Friday is like I'm still thinking about work up until almost Friday night. So I know that I need this almost like brain relaxation time for it to fade away from thinking about work so that by Saturday rolling around, I can say, hey, I'm focused on family, friends, fun, things like that. Now, when I was with my corporate job, I would be working up until Friday, thinking about work on Saturday, and then Sunday would be around, and then I'd be thinking about work again because I got to prepare because Monday's almost here. And it's like, I would never not be thinking about work at that point. So with this, I'm at least letting my brain, come down from work. And then, Monday comes around. Okay, what's the week going to look like? Let's plan it out and then start to work on Tuesday.
It's that Jerry Seinfeld thing. Have you seen the Jerry Seinfeld skit
about that?
about he's like, man, it's 7 a.m. I got to get ready for work because I got to be at work at 8. And then it's 8 o'clock and you get to work and you're like, oh, what am I going to have for lunch? I wonder what. And then you go to lunch and you're sitting at lunch. You're like, man, I got a busy afternoon. And then that afternoon you're like, I got to get out of here because I got to beat traffic at 5 o'clock. And then you're on your way home and you're never living in the moment. You're always living somewhere else, and it's so hard to do.
That's the tough practice.
You gave us 2 things to do to get there. First, play test. Yep. Number 2 is build that big pot of money, that emergency fund, so that you give yourself a good solid ramp to get through, whether it's bad timing or things just aren't going to work the way that you think that they are. What's third on that list? Is it looking at your debt load? Is it looking at your budget? What would be number 3?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about financial preparation outside of, testing it and making sure you have money for the runway, I would say trying to take care of any larger expenses so you can bring down your overall need for that income in your business. So for us, we did things like eliminating all of our debt. So this was my student loans and this was the car loan, the HELOC, getting rid of all of that. We worked on our investments early on in our 20s and 30s to build up about $500,000 in investments. And this helped us to hit what we like to call coast fire in our community, where we said, hey, without any further contributions, this thing could potentially get us to 2 million or beyond by the time we're in our 60s without any further contributions. And this could take care of us in our retirement on top of what we might receive for Social Security. So it's like checking these boxes off: debt-free, coast fire. And then we even paid off our mortgage too. And by paying off our mortgage, that helped to lower our expenses even more. So by approaching solopreneurship in this way, I only have to earn so much in order to make this work because our expenses have been cut drastically. So when we started, we only really needed about $6,000 per month to live our comfortable life. So between one part-time worker and another part-time worker. That the fourth element there is really a wife that's also working part-time too, that supports us too. So we have two incomes coming in. We just don't need to earn as much in order to live our comfortable life.
But even though she prefers not being a solopreneur, and this is interesting for people that during this conversation have gone like, you know what, I don't like those downsides.
Yeah.
The other cushions that you built up by getting rid of your debt, Nicole, you say, is able to do what she loves to do as well.
Exactly. And she's not a business owner. She looks at what I'm doing for growing a business. She's like, that's crazy. I would never do that. I don't want to sell anything. I just want to go to work and get things done. So what she did was pursued part-time work.
I remember having a conversation with your amazing spouse one time about how they were promoting her. And this is one of my favorite stories your wife ever told me, Andy. And they were talking about promoting her. And I think she said something to her boss like, if you promote me, I'm going to quit.
Yes.
How many people get to say that?
Isn't that great? Yeah, she was working in corporate America still. She said, hey, let me go back to the corporate America, but just part-time and see how it is. She still hated it. It was like, and she kept on doing so well that they said, hey, you shouldn't just be a administrative assistant. You should be a digital project manager. She's like, no, that's what I was doing before. Get me out of that. Like, I'm not in. I don't want any promotions. Get me out of here. So she decided to go back to trade school and learn a skill that she could do with her hands, get out of the email grind, get out of the, client relation. And she went back to become an esthetician. So she's been doing that for about 3 years now. And she works Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and she loves it.
That's incredible. It also strikes me that, when we talk about debt in America, we're always talking about interest rates, right? What was the interest rate on your mortgage?
We had a 3% mortgage at the time when we paid it off.
But it truly didn't matter.
No, it didn't matter. No.
It was about cash flow.
This was about buying time. This was saying, hey, if our expenses are, let's see, it was about $1,300 and principal and interest. So I'm going to do horrible math. What's that times 12? Anyway, 20,000 some odd dollars that we didn't need to have as much in our income. And that was a big chunk if we're considering saying, hey, we're going to change careers and we're going to work part-time. Not having to earn that extra 20K was pretty nice.
You are big, I know, on celebrating your wins. I've seen your social media, by the way. We'll link to it on our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. You had a great one today or yesterday about shoveling your driveway.
There you go.
Just how fun it is for you to shovel your driveway and reminding me why I'm not your neighbor anymore. And it's like, I went out and ran this afternoon and it was like 60 something degrees. So,
sorry we're having this conversation in January, people. So this is a different story. Let's talk again in August, Joe.
That's right. Good point. No, then I'm your neighbor.
Exactly.
Then I'm coming back. Yeah. But you sometimes publicly celebrate your wins, but what is your system for making sure that you stop and you look at the road that you've traveled and high five your family members?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, a big part of it is celebrating along the way because there are these little joy moments. But I mean, as far as tracking personally, I'm a very goal-oriented person. I get jacked up about these things. So I do a couple physical things that help me. I have a full focus planner that I use that helps me kind of track my day, that helps me keep everything in check with regard to what am I doing this day, what am I doing this week, what am I doing this month, and how does that relate to the goals that I have? I also have a daily habit tracker that I keep on my phone that helps me stay in tune with saying, hey, you're only going to work 20 to 25 hours this week. All right, let's track that and make sure you're actually staying true to that instead of just talking about it on a Cool Guys podcast. Also, like I have health goals. I have goals for my relationship with my wife and my kids. I track all those. I don't tell my wife I track anything with regard to our relationship. She'll think it's super unromantic. Don't tell anybody about that. But it helps me to stay as a good husband and say, hey, these are the things that she likes to do. Make sure you are following up on that, man. So I like to use these systems and I like to use these tools to help me stay accountable to the guy that I want to be. I say I'm going to be a family man. Well, what are the things a family man would do? So I want to make sure that I'm actually doing those things.
The book is out this morning.
Thank you. I love it. Yeah, I'm pumped, man.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
It is. It feels good. It feels good to have it out.
It is just incredible. And people can get it everywhere, Andy?
Absolutely. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your favorite bookstore. And if they don't have it at that bookstore, tell them to get it. On Your Time by Andy Hill.
Absolutely. Or go to marriagekidsandmoney.com, and I'm sure you'll have all the places there as well. We'll link to it on our show notes page at Stacking Benjamins. By the way, we only covered a little bit of owning your time, obviously, because it took Andy longer than 25 minutes to write this.
Took a lot of time.
Book. There's so many aspects to owning your time that it is truly a blend of art and science. And Andy, watching you master it over the years has been fantastic. So thank you for mentoring our stackers on owning more of their time in 2026.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you for being a friend along the way.